Hello, welcome to another live Google Hangout on the Living Income Guaranteed. And today we will be discussing do-it-yourself social change and living income guaranteed. And as you might have watched in our previous Hangout, we were discussing a little bit about the media wars that we are now going through in relation to all of this information that we get onto ourselves. And then we see that change then becomes this very thick and heavy thing that we cannot kind of grasp our minds around it. And so we then go into this helplessness and hopelessness about potential wars without really focusing ourselves on what we can do, in essence, to actually conduct this change. So we left off in that phase or that aspect of social change in the last Hangout, and today we will be kind of landing this point, earthing it, and this means making it practical, making it tangible for us to realize, what does this mean, in fact, to change the world, beginning with myself? How can I be the change that I want to be, that I want to see in this world and be in this world, of course? So we have Joana Jesus from the UK with us. Hi, Joana.
Hi, Marlen. Hi, everyone.
And she will be, she's in the UK right now, and she's also been participating in the Portugal Basic Income Group as well. We had a previous Hangout with her. You will be able to check it in the links as well for a reference. And today we are focusing on an aspect that she wants to share herself, which is also stemming from this very cool article that we also mentioned in our last Hangout, Social Change, We Are the Problem That We Are Seeking to Solve. And so we were discussing about this article the other day, and we said, well, let's bring it on to the Hangout to share with everyone, because she is quite the perfect example, and she will be sharing with us her personal experiences about these realizations. So, Joana, what does it mean to be this change and do it yourself type of situation in terms of what you see, the social changes that are required in this world, and how you can relate those problems to yourself as well?
Hi, yeah. So when I think about social change, and actually the word social, it seems that it's something very big, and of course it's a society. But one step that I took was to actually bring it down to the self, like self-change, and how is that my presence and my actions in my daily life, like very simple ones and tests that I do, how is that contributing or not to create a better world, at least in my environment, my reality, within my family, my relationships, and consequently the way I see the world. So it has been a journey for myself, because my background was actually studying international relations and politics. So I was always starting from the bigger picture. And sometimes it was scary, because you would see a problem and you're like, I had no idea how I would be able to negotiate these or to decide what is best for that situation. And then it makes things so big. It's almost like a nightmare, because you don't know where to start. And what I've been realizing over the last few years, like 4 or 5 years, is that the best way to start is from myself, because that's what I know. That's where I cannot hide from myself, and I can actually be very specific. Let's say sometimes you see a problem out there in the world, and a cool thing that I've been doing is to see where is that in my daily life that same pattern is manifesting.
And that's so, also, sorry, you want to continue, go for it.
No, go ahead, Marlen.
Because that's precisely how we tend to kind of numb ourselves, so to speak. Like, we don't tend to see or realize how we are the fabric of the society, of the system in itself that we are trying to change. And we often just overlook our own relationship to our own self, our relationships in our world, reality, work, our immediate environment. So how has that then become part of your starting point of this self-change?
So I actually had an experience last week, which I'm going to tell you about, and it helped. It was a good example to share with you guys about how is that the change can be manifested. And basically, I was walking in my neighborhood one day, and I was satisfied. I was like, okay, wow, the spring is coming. Everything seemed to be okay, clean. I was fine. I was like satisfied. And then the next day, and this is true, the next day I was walking and I was upset. I was like, I didn't like the neighborhood. It was too dark. I started seeing problems everywhere. I was actually so reactive. And
We kind of lost Joanna, or myself, so I'll see what went on. Anyways, so it seems that also the Q&A is disabled, so that's kind of a situation. So if anyone can let me know whether they can keep hearing me or not, I'm trying to solve the problem of the Q&A. Okay, so she's going to be restarting probably. So if everyone can hear me, then I will continue just sharing a bit on this point that I'd also like to share in terms of how we tend to disencourage ourselves pretty much when we look at social change, and we tend to only see or understand the system as this big mess. But we often don't look within ourselves, how we interact with our own lives, how we are part of the problem that we often only point fingers to, as we've explained many times. And we don't even realize that if we had a system that was generally best for everyone, that could also still be kind of tampered if each one of us still stepped into some kind of internal problem, desire, want, need that actually vexes or mains the ability to make a system work. And this is also a very cool and interesting point that is shared in that article that we also will be placing in the info section, because it explains how even if there's a company that has the best structure in the world, so to speak, and everyone is having a democratically placed position, people that, for example, come from a background of poverty and really still desiring to be a rich person, for example, they suddenly can decide that, yes, well, they want to earn more money and they deserve it actually. So with their greed in place and with their now new position of empowerment, then they can actually bring down this entire structure of a democratic business, for example, where all workers were meant to earn according to their positions and everyone was agreeing to it. There was no hierarchy apparently. But the moment that someone steps in and starts wanting to get more money, for example, then this person will just ruin the whole thing. And this is also a very interesting aspect, that we tend to not look within ourselves. We tend to always see about, for example, greed. And we look at the politicians, the kings, queens, the CEOs, the corporations, but we never really look within ourselves. Well, where am I still living in that kind of constant desire, want, and need of wanting to be on top, wanting to ruin another's life so that I can get more money? Do I really need that money? Am I actually living within an ass greed, for example, the same way that other people do? And so this is something that we usually tend to overlook within ourselves. And that is precisely the kind of change that we have to start brewing within ourselves. So part of what we were discussing with Joana as well, and what she will continue discussing, is precisely how to do that process of social change that begins with the level in which we've been acculturated or educated. And these words are quite big, and they imply essentially all the environmental influences that we get from our parents, our media, our schools, our entire structure of society. I mean, we are born into it, so we just learn how to cope with it. And many of us, maybe yourself as well, maybe as you were a child, you were pondering, well, why does money operate this way? Why do people have to go through starvation? Why do people have to go through this kind of structure of stepping up the ladder of success and kind of go through all of this suffering? Why aren't we providing this to everyone? But we haven't realized that we haven't actually first recognized that it is in the patterns of how we live that we create that kind of hierarchy, that we believe that some maybe deserve more than others, or that you deserve more than others, or that maybe people that have better education deserve more money because, oh, well, they have a career. But we don't even start pondering, well, why isn't that education available to everyone? I mean, we have to actually consider that we will only recreate the patterns that we are trying to change if we don't recognize that we are the one bad seed, so to speak, that we are seeking to eradicate or to change or solve. And so it is not really about the great man on top and the great man on power or the CEO of a corporation, you know, the usual people that we are trying to kind of express this kind of anger. But the anger, at least what I've realized, was actually to myself, because it is exactly ourselves that have been the ones that have left this entire structure, this entire system and society to be as is, you know, without any further question, without any further realization of, well, I mean, if this thing is not working, if this democratic system is not working, if this society is not working, if the education system is not really working, why do we continue to be simply complacent to it? And if we go down to our own lives, we all have these very recognizable patterns that maybe we are living within ourselves. Maybe we have certain addictions or behaviors or attitudes toward another that we believe is righteous because, you know, they did this to me, and so I have to give them what I believe is a revenge and to teach them a lesson. That kind of attitudes are already kind of creating this entire flow of problems that we then simply project or that we manifest or create as the nature of the system that we are trying to oppose. And that is something very revealing because we tend to not really want to look within ourselves, but if we have become the problem that we are seeking to solve, as that article also points out, then we will also become the solution that we want to see in this world. And so a suggestion, of course, and this is also to realize that change is not something that is very difficult or that is out there or that you require a particular profession or studies to do this, because it is about, as Joana will hopefully also share, changing these little aspects, changing these little patterns in our lives wherein we maybe wanted more because we just could get it because we were in a position of power. And when we decide not to do that, then, for example, this lady in this factory, instead of messing up the entire democratic structure and, you know, messing up the hierarchical position that she was in, and abusing others by giving herself more money, for example. Instead of doing that, realizing that if she only allows herself and commits herself to stick to what has been agreed and not corrupt the system along with others to become the new elite, then that change would be actually visible and will be sustainable. So that's something that we usually don't tend to look at, or we tend to avoid looking at, and that's precisely what Joanna will also be continuing sharing with us. So Joanna, can you hear us? Okay, I can't hear you.
Yeah, can you hear me, Marlen?
Yeah, sure. Now it's okay. So you can continue with your example, because I just also gave a little background to that, to now also bring the practicality that you were discussing as well.
Sure. Sorry, there was a bit of a problem over here, but I was just telling you how in one day I was walking and I was seeing the world through a completely different filter, and then the next day I was seeing the opposite, where I was angry and frustrated. So that's a very cool example for me to investigate. So rather than keep participating in that thought, or either the positive or the negative, I actually, when I arrived home, I asked myself, okay, what's going on? What's happening within me? And then, of course, because I realized that I had a problem, I was the one seeing the world in a completely different way. I gave myself a little bit of time to see what went during that day, what caused the reaction. So was there at work that could have triggered that within me? Was I tired? Was something? And obviously I found out what the problem was, where the stress was coming from within me, and that was very simple. It was very simple to learn how I react to things, and obviously then I could see what the solution could be. And it's very gratifying, I must say, when sometimes we, as if we feel sick, we're sick, and then we find what the disease name is. Like, we realize, okay, this is the problem, okay, now I know how to solve it. And that's very similar to the social problems that I find. So, and that helped me to see that sometimes I make the problems bigger than what they actually are. Because in our minds we accumulate so many things that we don't give ourselves the time to actually write about them, to see where my reaction comes from, and then to be gentle with myself and see, okay, this is how I reacted, how can I do better next time, how can I avoid reaction, what can I correct within me. And if we take that, I can actually ask, like, what could have happened if I had continued with that reaction? Maybe I would see someone on the street that needed my help or anything, and I wasn't either. I wasn't even thinking about helping another because I was so closed within myself. So that's how we can see how we can extend our problems to other people and the other way around. When we are stable, when we create that stability, then we are going to be open to see others, to help others, to talk to others. And if we then multiplying these to 7 billion people, imagine how the world could be. Each one of us would solve their own problems individually and then come out to the world with solutions rather than bringing their own problems with it.
That's a very cool point, and we have also a comment from Rebecca saying, it is like we are driving within ourselves, using beliefs to guide us, to slow down and see the detail of the world around us, which means to look at what is going on and investigate it, because we are in fact, yes, moving so fast within our minds that we have lost sight of the speed of that belief. For example, believing that something is very difficult to handle, or something very difficult to direct. And so we accept that limitation as such, and then we kind of miss up the point of the actual insight that we can get from it, which is precisely what you're sharing here that you can actually do. So can you share with us also maybe a point wherein you've seen how you've changed something, you've made a different decision, and how that has affected you, your life, and possibly, obviously, the society and your environment?
Yeah. So actually, recently I restarted doing sports outdoor, and I noticed a big resistance and the giving up pattern within me. And this was quite surprising because I had always defined me as someone that enjoys sports, and I was actually basing myself on my memories when I used to do sports at school. Now that I restarted doing them in my daily routine, I noticed that there was this thought of giving up. I can't do this anymore. It's too much. I'm going to fade out. I was actually having all sort of ideas. So it was very cool that I was with another person that noticed this, and it helped me to see, look, stop that and keep working. You know that you can do it. You have to practice. You haven't been practiced for a long time. It's normal. So keeping up. Don't go into that. And it was a moment, let's say 5 minutes, where I had that reaction, and I transcended that. It was after that I was okay. I was back on track. I kept on working. I did much more than I thought.
Okay, we lost her again.
I noticed that this simple change within me unlocked very... I was just saying that that moment I changed my attitude of not giving up. It actually unlocked various other points within my life, if that makes sense. Because it's just a pattern of thought, and if we practice that pattern many times, we accept it, and that's the way we live in about anything in our lives. And in that week, I had a very important assignment at university that I needed to deliver if I wanted to pass and to have my degree complete, my master's completed. And funny enough, at some point, the giving up thought came up, and I was like, no, I'm not gonna do this again. I'm gonna do this. This is my responsibility. I have signed up to do this, so I'm gonna do my best. And it's so interesting to see that by helping me with my physical body, so giving the example of sports, and by actually changing that pattern within me and to proving to myself that I am able to work for that, to walk that decision. And this can be applied to anything. Like, no matter what a person does, either like those professions that we may seem that are useless, they're not. They are required. So whatever people are doing, people are watching this hangout, you know that you can be good in what you do. You just have to dedicate yourself. And then by doing that, you may start doing other things that you may never consider. So even sometimes, let's say, you think about politics, and you think of that as so far away. Well, I'm never going to be involved in that. I'm not good at it. But you never know how your decision can influence by leaving you as an example. You don't know the people that listen to you, that are seeing you, how you can actually be that role of empowerment, that you prove to yourself you're able to do that, so other people learn from you. And then it's like a snowball of change rather than a snowball of problems.
Exactly, and that's the way that we can also stop kind of seeing the problem as too big and accumulating within our own very everyday examples. I mean, this to the regular listener might be like too far from politics or economics or whatever that we usually talk about here. But this is precisely where change is brewed, where change begins at the thought level. I mean, we've given up so many times in relation to world change, basically because we already limit ourselves within this, oh, you know, what's the point in it? I cannot do anything. But if you start doing that change at an individual level and within your own life, that definitely then becomes the way that you will not only act in these various situations, but for the rest of your life. And what would you say then about this new culture that is required? What would that culture of life, so to speak, of supporting life would require?
Yeah, definitely, Marlen. And maybe one advice that I could give, it's very easy to blame, and there is at the moment a culture of blaming the system, of pointing the finger at politicians, people that are taking decisions, CEOs, anyone that you see up there with the power basically. But by doing that, we're actually saying to ourselves, we are powerless. We can't do anything. But of course, well, that point is like, I mean, it's not going to be the politician that is going to fix your house or it's going to fix the problems in your family. You're going to start somewhere, right? And it's interesting that once you start, it might be a thing that we can see the effect of problems in our lives. We know how they affect us so badly, but it's perhaps more difficult to recognize solutions because that's how things should be. And we take problems for granted as the only way that we live, and we don't see that solutions are actually the way forward. And that it's so cool to you can actually by giving yourself a try, giving yourself a go, like, okay, so if I change this, what's going to happen? And then you can write it down, for example, and you see how you're affecting others and yourself first. It's very self-rewarding, and it's something that I wasn't used to because you always think that someone else is going to save you, is going to do this for you, or not everyone, but it's a very cultural thing of always hoping something to happen, to change. And then you start doing that for yourself, and you're starting being the leader of your life, which you already are. It's just that we call it something else. And actually, one other thing that I was telling to Marlen is actually the word responsibility. Sometimes we associate to punishment, to school, to have to deliver the essays, be responsible, be a grown-up, rather than be responsible